From the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. Consider This, a program of issues and information behind today's news.
3, 2, 1. Aviators. This is your captain speaking.
Hi everyone, I'm Cathy Wyatt. Welcome to the 25th season in this week's edition of Consider This. Our topic, Nebraska's Top Gun. Ted Carter joins us now to talk more about his military service and his service as the 8th president of the University of Nebraska's system. Thank you so much for being here and welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be with you, Cathy.
I have to start with the obvious. Have you seen the new movie?
I have. I've seen it twice.
Oh my goodness, no surprise there. All right, before we get your impressions, I want to take viewers back to the mid-'80s when the first movie was in production. Where would we find you at that time?
Well, I was flying in an F-4 Phantom off the carrier USS Midway that was homeported in Yokosuka, Japan, and I was selected to go to Top Gun, which was a big deal back then. And I got to go to Naval Air Station Miramar and attend the 5-week training program, kind of that graduate level air-to-air fighter tactics program in February of 1985, graduating in March of 1985.
Okay, that first movie, right, was filmed on the USS Enterprise. Now I understand years later you were the commander of that aircraft carrier group. For our viewers, what does that entail? Well,
it was a really cool culmination to my career. That was only 10 years ago that I was still actively flying. I was 52 years old, flying off the carrier Enterprise, and my job was to oversee the aircraft carrier itself, the air wing, its pilots, its crew, 6,000 men and women on board that aircraft carrier, the first nuclear-powered aircraft carrier we ever built in 1960. But in addition to that was all the other surface combatants that went with that ship. So it was a strike group, not just the carrier, all the other ships. And at one point, we had 2 aircraft carriers in the group and over 20 ships. And we were operating in the Persian Gulf.
Now, President Carter, we're going to talk a little bit more about your military service, but I'm kind of getting into the mind of the viewers now, and this whole idea of you meeting Tom Cruise, right? So what do you think is important for us to know about your relationship with him?
Well, I think the most important thing for your viewers to know, and for any young person, is you just never know what's really going to happen. I was a student at Top Gun. I believe I was in week 3. We'd heard some wind that Paramount and some people were interested in doing a movie. I can tell you the instructors were not all that keen on the movie because the script was so not realistic. But they were proceeding with it. The Navy was supporting it. So as the low man on the totem pole, myself as a student at the school was asked to meet Tom Cruise for his arrival with his handler. The first day was a Wednesday during the week. And myself and another naval aviator named Bob Schrader, who was a Naval Academy classmate of mine, he and I met Tom Cruise for the first time he showed up at Naval Air Station Miramar.
So what's he like, President Carter?
Well, of course, we thought he was a movie star. We had this idea that he's coming in to play a Top Gun guy. He was the opposite of what we thought. He was very humble, very athletic, very interested in what we did, asked us a ton of questions. Why do you do this? How come you don't get paid more? What keeps you motivated to keep doing it? Because we were his kind of first role model studies, if you will. And of course, the next day we're going to throw him in the swimming pool and put him through his actual training before he actually got in a jet.
Can I ask you, for someone like that, and then you having the experience that you had at the time, what did you believe to be the most important thing to communicate to him?
Well, and it was, we were just being sincere. We did our job because of love of country. We loved flying. And the combination of those two things, there's a certain amount of patriotism to it. And I think he got that. And of course, you can see over his career, he's fallen in love with speed. He's fallen in love with the military. And, a lot of people have called this movie a love letter to naval aviation. And I think there is something to that.
Talk a little bit about what you believe this movie has done for naval aviation.
I think it shows people, first of all, what it actually looks like and feels like to be in the air. Top Gun 1986 was the best aviation movie ever filmed up to that point. And without going through any spoilers, I would just tell you this is the best aviation movie ever filmed in history.
Wow. You mentioned it, so tell us, what is it like to be up in the air on one of these F-14s that we've heard so much about? And I guess, how do you explain that to people? How do you even begin to explain an experience like that?
Yeah. Well, the movie will give you the sense that it's always live action and it's always, heart pumping and a lot of things happening all the time. The truth is, when you are flying out in the middle of the ocean and doing your missions, whether you're en route to a combat mission or really just patrolling the seas, there's an awful lot of quiet and still time. You're flying around at altitude and 1G. Those exciting moments happen on takeoff, on landing, and usually in the final execution of any type of combat mission. It was described to me when I was at Top Gun, and this is the best phrase I ever heard that describes what it's like to actually go on deployment, which are usually 6 to 8 months long. You fly usually every other day, if not every day, thereabouts. Everybody wants to be a cowboy, but nobody wants to ride the range. And I think that's a really accurate depiction of what it takes to be, kind of in the marathon of what it takes to be a good aviator flying on off the carrier for a career or even a deployment.
Well, they reference, especially in that first movie, the best, being the best. And those of us who are watching an action film like that, I'm often thinking as the plane is spinning around, right, and doing all sorts of maneuvers and that type of thing. Talk about the type of person, and maybe you can even reference yourself, that type of person that it takes to be able to step foot in a plane like that. Not only your mindset, right, but your physical as well. What is that like? What does it take?
Well, it certainly takes a certain amount of athleticism. I won't deny that. But ultimately, I would say there's a team effort aspect to this. And sometimes that doesn't come through in the movies as much as it is in real life. If you're flying in a single-seat airplane, a two-seat airplane, you're always part of a team. And you don't lose sight of that. So I think that part's really important. And then the idea of being open to getting better at your craft every day. I still take that in what I do today. I don't believe I will ever know everything about anything. You have to be open to learning more and more and accept the fact that there's more for you to learn. And that couldn't be even more important when you're flying a high-performance tactical jet airplane.
You talk about that whole team concept. Boy, there's just so much that goes into what you said, and probably the number one factor, at least from where I'm sitting watching, is trust.
Yeah.
So how you come in and you meet that person with whom you're going to spend that kind of time, some of that trust probably has to be built pretty instantly, right? I mean, talk about that a little bit.
Well, think about what it takes just to launch and recover an airplane, and you see these scenes in the movie. What might be lost on most people is that trust goes throughout the entire aircraft carrier. So, there are, people that load weapons on the airplane, that put fuel in your airplane, that do all the maintenance on that airplane. There are the people that you're flying with. And then there's the people that run the catapult system. So, it is literally putting a pebble in a slingshot and getting shot basically from 0 to 200 miles an hour in a track that only goes from 0 feet to about 220 feet, and you're airborne at the end of it. And there are hundreds of people that are involved in just a single launch. It takes 1 million gallons of water instantly turned to steam to launch basically a 65,000-pound F-14 Tomcat. And the last person that touches that airplane before it goes airborne is a young enlisted sailor, a young man or young woman who's underneath your airplane at full power, who's making sure that your launch bar is perfectly fitted inside the shuttle, which is the piece of gear that will literally sling you off the ship. So you're trusting everybody to do their job. And we do it every day with no fanfare. Most Americans have no idea the complexities that are involved here, and we do it incredibly safely.
Okay, thank you. As you were talking, I was thinking, so when was your last experience, and what do you miss most about all of that?
Yeah. Well, you certainly miss the professionalism of all the people doing their job. There's nothing more exciting than when you finish a mission after you've landed on a carrier, particularly at night, because that's still the hardest thing to do in naval aviation. When you park that airplane, you get out of it, and you get to be with all of the crew that helped make that launch and recovery possible. There's no greater feeling. And my last landing as a 52-year-old admiral on board the Enterprise was at night. That was my 2016th carrier-arrested landing. And I was proud to have been able to do that for all of my life. And I served 38 years in the Navy. I actively flew for just under 35 of those. And that's pretty rare. It's pretty rare to be able to fly that long, mostly because of the physical requirements. And I had to pass all that, and it was a lot of work, but there was nothing more satisfying than being able to do that at the end of my career.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, as you were stepping off that plane for the last time, and I'm sure our viewers would wonder that too, especially when you talk about the numbers that you do. Thoughts as you're just taking those steps?
Yeah, well, I knew it would be the last time that I would fly operationally. I did have a chance to fly one more time after that, but not off an aircraft carrier. So I had that perspective, and that was enough. I mean, I was very fortunate. I was very blessed. I never had to eject in a Navy jet. And I saw a lot of my roommates and a lot of people that I flew with eject, and I saw people lose their lives, not even in combat, just in normal flight operations. It was an inherently dangerous business, especially early on. Mm-hmm. And even some of that's depicted in the movie. By the way, some of that's done accurately.
Well, I did want to ask you, in terms of that, the danger factor, your mindset. I mean, I can't even imagine. There are those of us who, are a little bit leery of heights, for example. You get in there and, like you said, you take off so quickly.
Yeah.
Is there a part of you, or was there a part of you at all in any of that thought, what am I doing? I mean, the fear, I would imagine, would have to be pretty great as well.
So I'm one of those people that never had the fear while doing. I would, in the after event, after something really dangerous happened, whether being shot at in combat or flying with a young aviator who was really struggling, and I'm trying to teach that person how to land safely on a flight deck, I usually reflected on the challenges or the danger later. And then you learn from that, and you try to make sure that you don't repeat some of the smaller mistakes so they don't become bigger mistakes. I'll admit, when I was 25 years old going through Top Gun, you have a level of self-assuredness. You could call it almost a level of cockiness. Some of that's self-preservation. And what I would tell you is, I got older, I lost most of that. Now, I always believed that I would be safe in an airplane. I never got in an airplane thinking that something bad would happen. I just didn't have that in me. That wasn't my mindset. But I opened my own aperture to know that humility is probably what kept me alive over the course of those 35 years of active flying, more than the cockiness that I had when I was a young aviator.
Okay, thank you. You did earn quite a bit as you were going through your career. One would be the nickname Slapshot.
Yeah.
What's the story there?
So people wonder, like, what's up with the call sign thing, right? Call signs actually were created during the Vietnam War and to the height of the Cold War against the Soviet Union, because we were always subject to people breaking in on our radio communications, and call signs back in the day used to have certain syllables and certain letters that were hard to pronounce, so that you would know if somebody was actually trying to use your name, but it wasn't really a friend. Then call signs had more to do in the modern era over something silly that you did, something dumb that you did, or maybe some play on words of your actual name. In my case, I was called Slapshot because, as a hockey player, and I played most all my life, 4 years at the Naval Academy, my slap shot was really bad. And I got threatened to be benched during a game by our coach for actually taking a slap shot. He said, you take another slap shot like that again, you won't play for me. So slap shot was not necessarily a cool thing, good thing. It was more of a play on, that was a deficiency you had, never to be forgotten.
Oh my goodness, but to this day we could find you on the ice. In fact, we found you on the ice, this is 5 years ago. We're going to take a look at some video here.
Sure.
Talk to us about your life in this realm.
Most people wouldn't think hockey is a lifetime sport, but it is, and it's something you can play well into your 60s. The video you're showing is of me playing while I was the superintendent of the Naval Academy in a men's pickup league, and skating with some of the Naval Academy skaters. So I've just been very blessed that I can still get on ice and still move around a little bit. Not as fast as I used to, but I still enjoy it.
I want to change gears a little bit and talk about your family. We have a photo that we're going to put up for our viewers, a very special photo.
Yeah.
And talk to us about those people in that picture.
So the picture that you're showing is me in my full dress uniform with my beautiful wife Linda, our son Christopher, and our daughter Brittany. This is in the backyard of the superintendent's home at the Naval Academy, and this was celebrating our 35th wedding anniversary. So we just thought we would mark that special day in 2017. And as I'm looking at this photo, I can't help but say that my daughter Brittany is about to be married this summer. So it comes full circle.
Congratulations on that.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What an exciting time. I do want to ask though, and especially for, or maybe on behalf of our viewers who are watching, who understand the military service, and oftentimes there are moves that are expected. I read somewhere that you and Linda moved 20 times, 2 of which were to Japan.
Right.
I mean, that's a lot to soak in, let alone knowing what you were doing and why you were making all those moves. How did the 2 of you successfully, after looking at that picture, successfully manage that?
Yeah, 2 words, teamwork and compromise. Linda did the majority of the heavy lifting with most of those moves, particularly the ones overseas. And the second time we moved to Japan, I was already on my way to Japan on the aircraft carrier Independence, and we had not planned to move there. So I called on the satellite phone and said, would you be willing to move to Japan for me to take a new job there? So she sold cars, got the house rented, got it packed up, got all the shots done, got the kids packed up, and moved everybody to Japan in the period of about 45 days. It's a pretty remarkable story. That's the type of things that a lot of our Navy spouses do. And of course, the moving never stopped. We moved here to Nebraska, which was move 21 and number 22. We had already bought a house in retirement, so we had to move to that house, move out of that house. I moved to an apartment in downtown Lincoln, and then moved to the president's house. So it doesn't stop, and it doesn't get easier.
Well, we're going to talk about your move to Nebraska, but I do want to ask one thing first. July 23rd, 2014, all this perseverance pays off, right? You just keep moving forward, and do what you need to do to reach a milestone. What an incredible milestone. Tell us why that date is so important in your life.
Well, that was the culminating moment of my Navy career, was being named the 62nd Superintendent of the U.S. Naval Academy. For my wife and I, who had met at the Naval Academy in 1979 when she was attending the University of Maryland, to be dating there, to get married right after I graduated, our whole career flying and doing all those things, to end it running the Naval Academy, a place that we both held so dear. And to be there and to cultivate, bring in, and prepare young men and women as midshipmen to become officers in the Navy and the Marine Corps, no higher calling, no more important job that I could have ever done in uniform. And I got to do it for 5 years.
So when people talk about you, President Carter, and your time there, what do you imagine that they're saying about you? I mean, we all wish to leave some sort of legacy. We all hope that we're talked about in a good way, right, after we've left something. What would they be saying about you now?
I'd like to say that they would be saying I was engaged, meaning I was involved in their training and their education, and that I was approachable. And I think that's important, to be approachable, that to not be just some 3-star figurehead, that they have an opportunity to engage with. It's pretty rare. to be a freshman or sophomore at an undergraduate level institution and actually have a relationship with your campus president. And I really did strive to do that there. I got to see two classes, the class of 2018 and the class of 2019, go through all 4 years. And that is also uniquely special. And I felt like I knew the vast majority of all of those that graduated. And I just had recently a chance to go back and see graduation this year. They were my last freshman class, and they just graduated with the class of 22. So it was really heartwarming to go back and see those young freshmen now graduate and get their commission in the Navy and the Marine Corps.
That was pretty special, I'm sure, for them to see you. I want to ask, again, before we get to Nebraska, as you look back on your career, I would imagine there are one or two things that typically come to the surface in terms of maybe a time that you were most proud of, a time that changed your life pretty significantly. You wouldn't be sitting here today if you had not gone through it. What are those for you?
Well, as a family man, I would say getting married and being at home to see the birth of our two children, definitely at the top of the list. Professionally, flying in combat and retaining all of the men and women that I took into combat with no losses, not just to be in the airplane and the flights that I did myself. You have to think of yourself as a big player coach, but to lead in that environment and to find out after going to Top Gun and then 20 years later, you're now put in this intense crucible of combat, to find out that you actually do have all the right elements to lead in that space and be successful. That was a milestone. And then I would say, at 40 years old, to be asked to go to the Navy's nuclear power program, the toughest academic program we have, to pass that year and a half of graduate level nuclear science and engineering, and then start a whole second career that took 10 years plus to eventually culminate in commanding an aircraft carrier. Those may sound like long-range, career things, but when you get there and they happen, and you look back on it, it was a day-to-day effort to be able to do all those things.
So I have to ask you, President Carter, and congratulations, by the way, on your career. Why on earth are you in Nebraska?
Yeah.
Why here? Why us, right?
Yeah. So the answer to that is rooted in this very thing that we started talking about. Believe it or not, Top Gun. So a lot of people think Top Gun is about being the best of the best, come out, you're going to be the best fighter pilot that the Navy ever produced. The truth is, and it doesn't come out necessarily in the movie, it's really about teaching and learning. You become a teacher for the rest of your life. That's why you wear the bright orange and blue patch on your flight suit for the rest of your life. You're expected to be an instructor in some manner, shape, or form all of your life. And I was during the operational period of my time in the Navy, but then I got into the education space. I led the Naval War College in 2013 and then the Naval Academy 2014 to 2019. I fell in love with the higher education mission, and I wanted to continue being in that. And I've been very blessed that Nebraska asked me to apply for that. I have to admit, Nebraska was not in front of mind when I was looking for places where I might be able to do that. And it turned out it was the absolute best thing that could have ever happened.
Well, and they asked you, and you accepted, and thank you, at a very difficult time. I mean, you just got started here when the pandemic was unraveling. And I guess, sitting here, I want to ask, what did you bring from the military service to be able to step up and into this role the way that you did amidst all of those challenges?
Well, my military career certainly taught me to expect the unexpected. And I mentioned that earlier, just with how I met Tom Cruise. That wasn't part of the plan when I went to Top Gun. And that certainly happened here. I mean, I still remember getting the first briefing from our professionals at the University of Nebraska Medical Center about what might be with COVID-19. And once we got past that this will never really happen to the realization this is going to happen, we sat down with the right team, my right strategists, my right leadership, to include the chancellors of all the campuses here in Nebraska, And we said, this is not going to be a period of time where we're going to let the condition of a global pandemic paralyze us. We have a mission to do. We have to make sure that we're doing everything we can to take care of our students, our faculty, and our staff. But we can't let the mission of educating our youth and our adults stop. And we made some extraordinary decisions early on. And what I would call the beginning, what I would also say from my military background, is what I would call the fog of war. You know, even in this information age, if you think you're going to go into any type of problem solving, having all of the pieces of an equation to solve something, that's just not how it works. So this was in May of 2020 when we decided that we were going to freeze tuition for 2 years, create the Nebraska Promise, a free tuition program for middle-income families of Nebraska. We changed the academic calendar. We reduced the cost of online education. And quite honestly, we put all that together in such short order. Most universities would have taken 2 or 3 years studying those things before they made a decision. We did all that in 30 days. And our enrollment actually grew during the pandemic. We're the only major Midwestern university in the country that could say that. Now, that doesn't mean that you've crossed some imaginary finish line. You got to keep working at it.
Right.
But the idea of bringing the right people in, having the right listening skills to let other people talk about how we might solve a really difficult problem, and then taking the best of everybody's ideas and moving forward collectively as a team, that's what we were able to do.
Well, and thank you again for that too. We have like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Top Gun, I want to bring this full circle, right? The new movie. 15 seconds, what would you say about it? No spoilers.
Well, the first thing I'd say is go see it. Go see it in a theater, because that's the only place you can see it. And it is the most accurate view of what it actually looks and feels like to be in an airplane. I sleep very well at night, and I've had things that were deeply rooted in my brain that have now come back that I think about every day.
Talking with President Ted Carter about being Nebraska's Top Gun. Folks wanting more information, I want to send them to several possibilities here. Nebraska.edu/president. There's the phone number. There's the email. He Twitters too. He tweets at U_president. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing your time, your expertise, and your service. Thank you.
It was a real pleasure.
Best wishes to you. Yeah. And thank you all for watching. We'll see you next week.
Consider This is an issues and information program produced by UNO Television. More information and program archives can be found at nebraskapublicmedia.org/considerthis. If you'd like to share your comments about this program, call UNO Television at 402-554-2516 during regular business hours, or send an email to cwyatt@unomaha.edu.